You're staring at your bank account, and after years of saving, cutting back on avocado toast, and pretending you enjoy cooking ramen noodles 17 different ways, you finally hit $50,000. Congratulations, you're officially richer than most people's cars, but still poorer than a decent wedding. Now what? Here's what most people do with 50 grand. They either let it sit in a savings account earning about as much interest as a dead houseplant generates oxygen, or they panic invest it into whatever stock their cousin's friend's barber recommended. But what if I told you there's a third option that could turn that $50,000 into a money-making machine that pays you to own it? Today we're talking about dividend investing, and specifically how $50,000 can snowball into enough passive income to make your future self send thank you cards to your past self. If you're interested in learning how to make your money work harder than you do at your day job, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if this information helps you out. Let's be honest about what $50,000 can and can't do. It's not going to buy you a Lamborghini unless you're shopping for a very small, very broken Lamborghini. It's not going to let you quit your job tomorrow and become a full-time influencer who reviews hotel pools. But it is enough to start building serious wealth through dividend investing. The average dividend yield in the market hovers around 2 to 4%. So with $50,000, you're looking at somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 per year in dividend income. That's roughly $80 to $160 per month. Now I know what you're thinking. Adam, I spend more than that on coffee. And you're probably right, which explains why you only have $50,000 instead of $100,000, but we'll work on your spending habits later. Here's the thing though, that initial dividend income isn't the point. It's like judging a baby's potential by how much they can bench press. Sure, right now your dividend portfolio can't even pay for your Netflix subscription, but give it time to grow up and it might surprise you. The real magic happens when you reinvest those dividends. Every quarter, instead of taking that money and spending it on something you'll forget about in a week, you use it to buy more dividend-paying stocks. More stocks means more dividends. More dividends means more money to buy more stocks. It's like compound interest, but with more personality and better quarterly reports. Think about it this way. If you can achieve a 7% annual return through a combination of dividend yield and dividend growth, your $50,000 doubles to $100,000 in about 10 years. Not exactly get-rich-quick territory, but definitely get-rich-eventually territory. And unlike your gym membership, this is something you'll actually stick with because it pays you instead of charging you monthly fees. Now let's talk strategy. Because throwing $50,000 at random dividend stocks is like playing darts blindfolded. Sure, you might hit the bullseye, but you're more likely to hit the wall, the floor, or that guy standing too close to the dartboard who really should have known better. The dividend growth investor's playbook is surprisingly simple. You're looking for companies that not only pay dividends, but increase those dividends every year. These are the overachievers of the stock market. The straight-A students who also play 3 sports and somehow still have time to volunteer at the animal shelter. You know the type, and yes, they're just as annoying in corporate form as they were in high school. But here's why you want these corporate overachievers in your portfolio. A company that has increased its dividend for 25 consecutive years is called a dividend aristocrat. That's not just a fancy title, it's like a financial pedigree. These companies have survived recessions, market crashes, and probably several boy band reunions. They're the financial equivalent of cockroaches, except instead of surviving nuclear disasters, they survive economic disasters and reward you with quarterly payments. The beauty of dividend growth investing is that it fights inflation for you. While your salary might stay the same for 3 years because your boss thinks cost of living adjustments are a myth like unicorns or profitable restaurants, your dividend income keeps growing. A company that increases its dividend by 5% annually will double your income from that stock in about 14 years, assuming you reinvest those dividends. Let's do some math that won't put you to sleep. Say you invest your $50,000 in a diversified portfolio of dividend growth stocks with an average yield of 3%, and average annual dividend growth of 6%. Year 1, you collect $1,500 in dividends. Not life-changing, but it's $1,500 more than your savings account was paying you. But here's where it gets interesting. You reinvest those dividends, so now you own more shares. Year 2, you collect more dividends because you own more shares, and those dividends are higher because the companies increase their payouts. It's like a financial snowball rolling downhill, except instead of getting bigger and more dangerous, it gets bigger and more profitable. By year 10, if you've consistently reinvested your dividends and maybe added a little more money each year, your annual dividend income could be approaching $5,000. By year 20, you could be looking at $15,000 or more in annual dividend income. That's real money that can supplement your retirement, pay for vacations, or fund your inevitable midlife crisis sports car purchase. Let's be brutally honest about the first 5 years of dividend investing. They're about as exciting as watching paint dry, except the paint is your bank account and it's drying very, very slowly. This is what I like to call the "is this thing even working?" phase of dividend investing. You'll check your portfolio balance obsessively, like a teenager checking their phone for text messages that aren't coming. You'll calculate your monthly dividend income, realize it's less than what you spend on gas, and wonder if you should have just bought lottery tickets instead. Spoiler alert, you shouldn't have, but the thought will cross your mind anyway. In year 1, your $50,000 portfolio might generate around $1,500 in dividends. That's $125 per month. Congratulations, you can now afford to eat out at Applebee's once a month without feeling guilty about it. Your friends will mock your boring investment strategy while they chase the latest meme stock or cryptocurrency that promises to make them millionaires by Thursday. But here's what they don't understand about the slow grind. Every quarter, you're collecting those dividends and reinvesting them. It's like planting seeds, except instead of waiting for tomatoes, you're waiting for money trees. And unlike actual gardening, you can't kill these investments by forgetting to water them. By year 3, something interesting starts happening. Your quarterly dividend payments are getting noticeably larger, not because you've discovered some secret investing hack, but because compound growth is finally showing up to the party. It's fashionably late, like that friend who always arrives after everyone else has already ordered appetizers, but it's here now and it's ready to work. Year 5 is when you start to feel like maybe, just maybe, this whole dividend investing thing isn't completely insane. Your annual dividend income might have grown to $3,000 or more, assuming you've been reinvesting and maybe adding a little extra money each year. That's $250 per month. Still not quit your job money, but it's starting to feel real. The psychological shift that happens around year 5 is crucial. You stop checking your portfolio every day like a nervous parent watching their kid's first soccer game. You start to understand that boring is beautiful, that consistency beats excitement, and that slow and steady actually does win the race, despite what every action movie has taught you about the benefits of dramatic last-minute heroics. Now let's talk about the secret sauce that makes dividend investing work: compound growth and dividend reinvestment plans, or DRIPs. DRIP sounds like something you'd need to fix with duct tape, but it's actually one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available to regular people who don't have trust funds or rich uncles. Here's how DRIP works. Instead of receiving your dividend payments as cash that you'll inevitably spend on something you don't need, like a third streaming service or artisanal ice cubes, the money automatically gets reinvested to buy more shares of the same stock. It's like having a responsible financial advisor who never lets you make emotional spending decisions, except this advisor works for free and never judges your life choices. The beautiful thing about DRIP is that it buys fractional shares. So if your quarterly dividend is $50 but the stock costs $60 per share, you don't just get 83% of a share and call it a day. You get exactly 0.833 shares, and that fractional share earns dividends just like a full share. It's democracy in action, except instead of voting, your money is making more money. Let's break down the math with a real example. Say you own 100 shares of a stock that costs $50 per share and pays a 4% annual dividend. That's $2,000 per share times 4%, which equals $200 in annual dividends, paid quarterly as $50. Each quarter, that $50 gets reinvested. If the stock price stays the same, you're buying one additional share every quarter. After 1 year, you own 104 shares instead of 100. Those 4 extra shares earn dividends too, so next year you're earning dividends on 104 shares instead of 100. But here's where it gets interesting. Most dividend growth companies increase their dividends annually. So not only do you own more shares, but each share is paying higher dividends. It's like getting a raise and a promotion at the same time, except your boss is a faceless corporation that actually follows through on its promises. The compounding effect accelerates over time because you're earning returns on your returns. It's like interest earning interest, except with more quarterly reports and fewer bank fees. After 10 years of reinvesting dividends, you might own 150 shares of that same stock. And if the dividend has grown at 5% annually, each share might be paying 6.5% of your original purchase price in annual dividends. This is why time is your best friend in dividend investing. The longer you let the snowball roll, the bigger it gets and the faster it grows. It's the financial equivalent of that scene in every cartoon where the snowball starts small but ends up destroying half the village. Except instead of cartoon destruction, you get cartoon-level wealth accumulation. All right, so you've got your $50,000 and you understand the snowball concept. Now comes the fun part, actually picking stocks without accidentally recreating the Titanic's investment portfolio. Because let's face it, Most people approach stock selection with the same strategy they use for picking what to watch on Netflix, scrolling endlessly, getting overwhelmed by choices and eventually settling on something they've seen 100 times before. The key to building a solid dividend portfolio is diversification, which is a fancy way of saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is run by a CEO who thinks Twitter is a business strategy. You want to spread your $50,000 across different sectors, because when one industry is having a bad day, hopefully another one is having a good day, or at least a mediocre day that doesn't involve congressional hearings. Here's a reasonable allocation that won't make financial advisors cry into their morning coffee. Put about 20% into consumer staples, because people always need toothpaste, toilet paper, and regrettable snack foods, regardless of what the economy is doing. Companies like Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola have been paying dividends longer than most people have been alive. And they'll probably still be paying dividends when robots take over and need their circuits cleaned with premium detergent. Another 20% should go into utilities, because even during a zombie apocalypse, survivors are going to want electricity to charge their phones and complain about the situation on social media. Utility companies are like the reliable friend who always shows up with pizza when you're having a crisis. They're boring, predictable, and absolutely essential. Companies like NextEra Energy and Dominion Energy have dividend yields that make savings accounts look like they're paying in monopoly money. Technology gets 15% of your portfolio, but we're talking about established tech companies, not whatever cryptocurrency your nephew is pushing this week. Microsoft, Apple, and Broadcom pay decent dividends and have business models that don't depend on teenagers doing dance videos. Yes, their dividend yields might be lower than other sectors, but they make up for it with consistent dividend growth and the fact that they're not going anywhere unless we all decide to go back to sending letters and using abacuses. Healthcare deserves 15% because aging baby boomers aren't getting any younger, and they're going to need a lot of medical attention, prescription drugs, and devices that beep reassuringly. Johnson & Johnson and AbbVie have been increasing their dividends for decades while developing products that keep people alive and comfortable, which seems like a pretty sustainable business model. Real estate investment trusts, or REITs, should get 10% of your allocation. These are companies that own income-producing real estate and are required by law to pay out most of their profits as dividends. It's like being a landlord without having to deal with tenants who think the garbage disposal is a suggestion rather than a requirement. Realty Income Corporation literally calls itself the monthly dividend company and pays dividends every month instead of quarterly, which is like getting your allowance more frequently. The remaining 20% can be split between financial services and industrial companies. Banks like JP Chase make money by lending your money to other people at higher interest rates, which is basically the most boring way to print money legally. Industrial companies like Caterpillar benefit from global infrastructure spending and the fact that humans love building things and then tearing them down to build different things. When selecting individual stocks within these sectors, look for companies with payout ratios between 40 and 60%. The payout ratio tells you what percentage of the company's earnings are being paid out as dividends. If it's too low, they're being stingy with shareholders. If it's too high, they might be paying out more than they can afford, like that friend who insists on picking up the dinner check even though everyone knows they're 3 months behind on rent. Also pay attention to dividend growth history. A company that has increased its dividend for 25 consecutive years didn't do it by accident. They did it by having a business model that works, management that understands long-term thinking, and probably really good coffee in their corporate offices. These dividend aristocrats have survived multiple recessions, market crashes, and changes in fashion that we're all trying to forget. Here's the uncomfortable truth about dividend investing. Sometimes the market decides to have what economists politely call a correction and what everyone else calls a financial panic attack. During these periods, your carefully constructed portfolio will lose value faster than a celebrity's reputation on Twitter. And you'll question every financial decision you've ever made, including that time you bought a timeshare presentation just for the free breakfast. But here's the beautiful thing about dividend investing during market downturns. The dividends keep coming. While growth stock investors are watching their portfolios evaporate like water in the desert, dividend investors are still collecting quarterly payments like nothing happened. It's like having a job that pays you the same amount whether the office is on fire or not. During the 2008 financial crisis, many dividend-paying companies actually maintained or even increased their dividends while their stock prices were getting demolished. Johnson & Johnson kept paying and increasing dividends throughout the entire crisis because people still needed Band-Aids and baby shampoo, even when their retirement accounts were shrinking faster than a wool sweater in hot water. The key to surviving market downturns is understanding that temporary price drops are not the same as permanent losses. Your dividend yield actually increases when stock prices fall because you're earning the same dividend payment on shares that now cost less. It's like your favorite restaurant lowering their prices but keeping the same portion sizes. You're getting better value, even if the restaurant looks a little empty. Risk management in dividend investing means diversification, but it also means emotional management. When the market is crashing and financial news anchors are using words like catastrophic and unprecedented, your brain will try to convince you to sell everything and hide your money under a mattress. Don't listen to your brain during these moments. Your brain also thought it was a good idea to eat that gas station sushi, and look how that turned out. This is where dividend investing gets really interesting, like watching a slow-motion explosion, but instead of destruction, it's your bank account getting bigger. By year 10, if you've been consistently reinvesting your dividends and maybe adding a little extra money each year, something magical starts happening. Your dividend income begins to feel less like pocket change and more like actual money that could pay for actual things. Let's say you started with $50,000 and managed to achieve a 7% annual return through dividend reinvestment and growth. By year 10, your portfolio could be worth around $100,000, and your annual dividend income might have grown to $4,000 or $5,000. That's real money that could cover a nice vacation, a few months of groceries, or that home improvement project you've been putting off since the Obama administration. But here's where it gets really exciting. Years 10 through 20 are when compound growth stops being polite and starts getting aggressive. Your dividend payments are now large enough that when they get reinvested, they're buying meaningful amounts of additional shares. It's like your money finally hit puberty and started growing at an alarming rate that makes you simultaneously proud and slightly concerned. By year 15, your annual dividend income could easily be approaching $10,000 or more. That's enough to make a real difference in your lifestyle. Maybe you can finally upgrade from the car that makes suspicious noises to one that only makes suspicious noises occasionally. Maybe you can stop pretending you enjoy cooking every single meal and actually eat out somewhere that doesn't have a drive-through window. The psychological shift that happens during this phase is profound. You start to realize that financial independence isn't just something that happens to other people or trust fund babies. It's actually achievable through patience, consistency, and the magic of letting corporations pay you to own small pieces of them. It's like discovering you've been carrying a winning lottery ticket in your wallet for 15 years, except instead of luck, it was just basic math working in your favor. Year 20 is when things get really interesting. If you've been adding money to your portfolio along the way and reinvesting dividends consistently, your annual dividend income could be approaching $20,000 or more. That's enough to cover a significant portion of your living expenses, especially if you're the type of person who doesn't need a different luxury handbag for every day of the week. This is what financial advisors call the crossover point, and what I like to call the holy grail of not having to pretend you care about your boss's weekend stories. It's when your investment income starts to approach your living expenses, and you begin to realize that working for money is optional rather than mandatory. The beautiful thing about reaching this phase is that your dividend income continues to grow even if you stop adding new money to your portfolio. Those dividend-paying companies keep increasing their payouts annually, and your reinvested dividends keep buying more shares that earn more dividends. It's like having a money tree that keeps growing bigger and producing more fruit, except instead of fruit, it produces quarterly payments that you can actually spend, and if you want to expand those payments to $10,000 a month, watch this next video.